So Wilmer, who's your favorite person and why?
My favorite person right now is my 5-year-old nephew. He's just a great reminder to have fun in life and just love and have fun. So he really brings that joy in my life.
I love it. And he's in Calgary?
He's in Calgary, yeah. Not being a parent myself, I think like it's a different kind of connection to just kind of be able to step in and out of like his like support system. But every time I do spend time with him, I can see how like his personality is developing, and also that yeah, like he has that joy for life, and I just like it invites me to just not take things so serious.
Yeah. We definitely need more of that. My Viewfinder is a proud member of the Alberta Podcast Network, locally grown, community supported. This episode is brought to you by Park Power, a provider of electricity and natural gas in Alberta that offers low rates, awesome service, and profit sharing with local charities. In Alberta, you get to choose who you buy your energy from. If you choose Park Power, your money stays here. Plus, Park Power shares its profits with local not-for-profits that are working to make a difference in their communities. Shopping local is very important to Park Power's owner, Chris Kozowski, and we love local here at the Alberta Podcast Network, so it's a great fit. Learn more at parkpower.ca. What does it mean to place an image on a pedestal, and what effect does that have on our consciousness? Wilmer's latest project challenges the traditional use of imagery and objects to create a sense of wonder and worship. He asks the question, why can't we build the same structures for disadvantaged and traditionally underrepresented groups and identities? What can we do to help define a new sense of beauty and wonder? And where should we start this conversation? Partly right here. So, without further ado, here's the second half of the conversation I had with Wilmer, and let's find out what he thinks.
So I think that now with my work, it's like I want to flip those narratives upside down and tell new stories. So yes, why can we not represent people of color or queer identities, femme identities as iconic? Because the people that I have photographed to me are iconic, and I want to share them in that way with the public.
As you point out, I mean, particularly European Catholics fucking love stained glass, ornate sculptures. They love, right, this visceral projection of their faith. Everybody's blonde, blue hair, blue-eyed, and all this shit. But you get what they want you to be, transformative but literal projections of what to worship, right? And the first thing that struck me when I saw, when I was introduced to your Instagram and then some of the work that you do, is immediately I started thinking about the imagery and iconography are doorways to the unknown. So they are bridges to allow us a spiritual experience. And I find it fascinating, and I think you're hitting the mark critically to challenge particularly conservative religious people to have to face something that they may glance at and say, oh, well, this reminds me of a candle that my grandma used to have, and then be like, oh, fuck, like there's there's somebody I don't understand anything about there, and maybe be offended, who knows, but it's fascinating to me to hear you, want to do that intentionally, that there's, so much structure around the way you approach these projects. It's great. I mean, what's the feedback? Are people upset, or are you getting a lot of support?
Thanks. You know what? Yeah, it's kind of both. Like a lot of this work has actually not actually been seen yet, because this is work in progress, right? So I've been working in collaboration with a carpenter, Peter Freeman, who has been building these altars. And it was really interesting because this project also is connected to Calgary Arts Development individual artist grant opportunity. And I knew I had this vision of like wanting to present this series of portraits in a very specific way, connected to them being displayed in standalone altars that were built. And when I met Peter, he said, yeah, I'm definitely interested. Like, let's collaborate on this. And I gave him some ideas, and I had actually had a friend of mine build like the first like prototype of these altars, and I showed that to the new collaborator, Peter, and he said, okay. He said, like, I get the idea, and so he said, let's do it. Then for like the next couple of weeks, I kept like messaging him, and I was so excited to get this going, and I was like, okay, Peter, like how's it going? Like, do you need anything? And he said, well, just tell me what it is that you want from these altars. And I said, okay. And I was like, well, like the one I showed you. And he said, yeah, but you just, when you tell me what you want, we'll get started with it. And I was so confused, and I thought, okay, but like we had this meeting, I showed him like some of the early like portraits that were already done, and I showed him the prototype. But what I didn't realize is that he wanted me to draw them. He wanted me to draw each of the altar, because the series is 12 in total. And so that kind of brought new challenges for me, because then I kind of had to teach myself how to do these drawings, like kind of like architectural drawings of these altars. And I just started to design and draw these, which was something that I wasn't expecting to do. I thought, oh, he'll just know what to do and build 12 different ones. And so it was really cool. It was like just kind of learning a new medium within this photography project. So yeah, I sent him the drawings, and then he's just started building them, and it's really cool to see those drawings come alive too. And it's kind of like a very curated vision, and the feedback has generally been like positive, and I think definitely of interest. Like people kind of ask those questions about like, why does it remind me of like Catholic imagery, or like what are the words on them, on the models. And I worked with Colin Menzies, who's multidisciplinary artist here in Calgary, and also my partner. And so we collaborated, and the process was really like working with the people that are in the photographs are mostly people that I admire. So they're not necessarily people that are like models that I just kind of met, through like some different platform. They're people that I like know and I admire. And so in the process of like when we were doing the shoots, we would also kind of have discussions around like what kind of designs would go on the bodies of the subjects. So like some of them have like empowering words in Spanish, like love, freedom, strength, courage. And it was interesting because it was more of like an organic flow. So we would just kind of select the words that felt right at that time for that person. And then on the flip side of that, some of the feedback has also been less positive. And even in this like public art installation that went up at Central Memorial Park, I think like within 3 days it had been defaced already. And so yeah, I think it was definitely challenging to be able to move past that, because I was like so excited that things had gone relatively according to plan with the design and installation, and then within 3 days it had been defaced. And I think that kind of brought in like a lot of different thoughts of like questioning the work or questioning why somebody might do it. But it was really brief, because I just kind of let those thoughts pass by, and we got the mural cleaned up.
It's such a positive thing. I would definitely have been consumed by it. I think as well, I don't have the clear vision or confidence to poke at it the way that you are. My experience of Calgary comes in different dimensions. So when I hang out with creators, particularly young, I don't think they're millennials anymore, Z, Q, whatever they are. I don't even understand anymore. But, my work with perspectives, I was meeting 18-year-olds, 20-year-olds, 25-year-olds. So they come from a different world, right? I'm 42. So I have my own biases, but it's great because they're so hopeful, and they're at least somewhat more woke, and there's much more representation in that area. So I'm seeing a lot more minorities, and I'm in the inner city. So I start building this worldview that Calgary is so like fucking forward. And then I have to be reminded, not just in this altercation downtown, but in general, statistically, Calgary is not that progressive in many ways in its culture. And so, my work is a little bit more benign than yours. It's more inside my head, but you're doing work that's both that, but also wanting to be in the public eye, wanting to challenge some of these tropes that we have. In particular, taking on religious iconography is, getting defaced on the street sidewalk at Central Memorial feels like the minimum. I kind of expect that. I almost am glad to hear that it's not, trolls getting on your Instagram or just people being really fucking small and hateful. So maybe that is proving me wrong. Maybe Calgary is a little bit more progressive than I thought, but I love it. I think it's great. I don't know. It's a weird thing that you're doing. And I respect it, but it feels scary to me. But maybe, you have a very spiritual approach to this thing. It's interesting.
So how do you think your move has impacted your work here? Because like you were sharing about that altercation that you had here in Calgary. So like, do you think that's something that like kind of was very specific that may not have happened in other cities? Because I guess I'm not really sure because you were doing like street photography.
Yeah, I guess briefly. So the portrait I gave to Exposure Studio to do my post. So that was taken by Scott Mallow, and the interesting thing about that picture is that was 5 minutes before we walked under the First Street Bridge, and this fucking asshole tried to grab my friend and break his Leica, and then started calling us homophobic, racial shit, spitting at us. We walked away from it feeling like we had done it in the most civil way possible, but it stuck with me. And I think the two things that have come out of that, one, it's really made me question what I do street photography for. Am I doing this to present people in their best light? So even if I'm going into a darker corner of human experience, am I doing it with some grace and good intent? Or, is it something that's just perfunctory or maybe even sociopathic or, masochistic? I don't know. So number one, I think my fear was that I didn't know what I was doing for anymore. But the second thing that came out was this podcast. And so I think 2 or 3 months into this pandemic, I was circling this, and I just thought, I'm not going to go out and take pictures right now because we're all hiding in our little caves anyway. But I started thinking about this question, and I thought, I can't solve this by talking to myself. I talk to myself too often already as it is. I thought, what better way than to ask, at first, my smaller photographic community if they'd be interested in talking with me. And now that I have access to all of you, I'm bothering you with it. And not specifically questions about conflict, but about your experience. And it's been incredible because there can be such a positive creative, it's in the word creativity, right? This life-affirming process that, it has a tone, doesn't it? I don't know. I didn't think until I started talking to people about how creativity was meant to be so positive. Often there's a trope of the suffering artist and this like manic fucking guy throwing paint everywhere and just being angry and, addled and just miserable. Now that to your point, now that the conversation is in the general public, we have to engage with it. How we do that, I have no idea. So for me, it's this podcast or, getting to know folks like you. For you, it seems like doing that and creating portraiture and other work. I don't know what other work you do. And for the folks that I've spoken to and the people I intend to, I'm sure it manifests itself in a variety of different ways. But so that's my existential rant about what happened this year.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. I think um, I'm gonna I'm gonna mirror something to you of what you were saying about like this work that you're doing, where you said like I'm now bothering this group of photographers from the exposure series, and I think I just want to encourage you, man, to like really see the value in it because I'm really grateful that you're doing this podcast and this series because I think now more than ever, the voices that of the creative collective are really fundamental and essential. I was having this really cool conversation about this with someone recently about how this pandemic has really changed the climate of how like we're used to seeing and experiencing art or creative and cultural entertainment, and how now like there's a big question mark for, especially I think for like when we think about the bigger organizations. And on top of that, then you also like take into account all of the like the current like social climate, right? So we have the pandemic and then the social climate that's also changing the spaces and how we knew them. And so this question mark of like how are we going to move forward and how are things gonna go on and continue in now looking so differently. And I think that these conversations that you're creating a platform for are really what are it's gonna be what is going to inform to for us to come up with the answers to that. Like how do we continue creating experiences here in Calgary and everywhere else in the world during this time. And I think it's going to happen through these kinds of conversations where, people just kind of talk about, like, like here I'm doing this work, like this new series for me was supposed to be an exhibition. And then, when the pandemic happened, the funder came back and said, we're not doing exhibitions anymore. So then I really had to like rethink how I was going to share this work because this work was actually created with the intention to be shared and to be thought provoking and to maybe piss people off and make people feel uncomfortable. And so now what I'm working on is creating a book of that work so that I can still share it because I still want to be able to piss people off if that's how they react to it. But the end goal for me is to create that visibility for these beautiful, iconic people that I've had the honor of like collaborating with.
Yeah, the images are beautiful. I think I only know Jimmy, and he's just a fascinating. I mean, I don't want to be dismissive of calling him a kid, but a young man. Like he's just connected, and his buddy Harvey, who I'm learning to kind of worship. I mean, he's crazy too, but just this youthful, hopeful, right? Like I can take on this shit and do it my way. I love it. I want to tap into that as much as possible. I spent too many years being cynical, so learning to be positive. You got to hang out with young people, I think, who still believe.
Well, like that's interesting because I think that I'm getting a lot of that from you. Like I'm getting like that sense of a sense of hope, and like in encouragement, and absolutely, I agree. Like I think like so, like the work that Jimmy and Harvey are doing is amazing, but I think that it can exist at any time, at any age, anywhere. And I think that in some of like talking about creating here in Calgary and some of the things that have come up in this conversation, like I think I always felt really proud to create here in Calgary, and especially around the themes that I've been exploring in my work. But there have definitely been conversations around like why do the work here? Like I've been really fortunate to have opportunities to exhibit my work internationally, and it's only in Calgary that my work gets questioned so much. And then and when it's been exhibited outside of Calgary, it's like it has not come to with questions that come up here in Calgary, and that's really interesting. And sometimes people say like, well, You know what, Wilmer? That's like pretty clear. Then like maybe you should be going to these places to show your work, because it seems like it's just kind of like, people just see it. The work speaks for itself, and they just say like, okay, we want to exhibit, we want to buy this work. Here is not right. Here is like, why are you doing this, and why is it like, what does it mean, and who are the people in the portraits? And I think to me that's kind of an indicator that, if it's going to happen here in Calgary, if it's going to have some impact, I'm really proud to be able to contribute to that in any way.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, it's what I told myself when I did the perspective. I mean, I'm speaking about it like in the past tense, like it's dead, but I built this perspectives thing 2 years ago to try to do exactly this. I was meeting all these creative people, and I thought Calgary at large needs to understand how talented people are here. But what you said reminds me, I met a director, I think her name's Anna Cooley. We put on a women in film panel talk. And when I did a podcast with her, she said something very interesting, kind of to your point. She said anywhere else in the world she's traveled, she can introduce herself as a director, but not in Calgary. If she says the word director in Calgary, people like question her. So she has to call herself a film producer in Calgary. Otherwise, nobody will sit at the table with her. And I think there's a reflection, kind of like you're speaking about, that if you want to challenge a norm, it's a great city to do that in. In bigger cities, I don't know if it's people are more woke or people are just more tired and stressed and they just kind of like shrug more. But in Calgary, there's a great, I don't want to say fight to pick, but there's work to be done here if you want to do that work. And it's exciting because I think there's a lot of nice people that actually want to have those conversations. They just don't know how. I hope. Otherwise, they'll be coming for me soon. I keep hoping.
You have my vote to actually market that to Calgary tourism. Come to Calgary, challenge the norm. Like, yes, let's do that in this city, right? That needs to happen, right?
Yeah, whether they want to or not, it's happening. I mean, the city's, we're starting to see some holes poked into it, which I think will be a good thing. As a creator, I think hopefully it'll be a good thing to get some space. Yeah, there's a lot of work. There's a lot of fun things that you can poke at here.
Yeah, for sure. And I think maybe that's where there is a lot of room to do a lot of that here in Calgary, and I think connecting to even like through the exposure series, like it's just amazing to be able to see the diversity of work that people are doing through that collective, and I think there's a lot more that Calgary offers. And sometimes where, when I talk to people that maybe have been in Calgary, like I have a friend who's been in Calgary for only like 3 years, and we've had conversations about their experience, like moving to Calgary from Turkey as an artist, like what their experience was. And they were sharing how like basically, like you really have to scratch the surface to get to that like really beautiful creative source that is in Calgary. And I think for somebody who has been living in Calgary, like for myself, who's been in Calgary for 30 years, and I have been, very grateful to have been working the majority of that time in the arts. Like to me, like I feel like I've been very fortunate to connect to a lot of creatives here in Calgary through my time. And I think that's actually what has informed me staying here for so long. But it's interesting for me to hear that somebody that says like, oh, I came here and like it really took some effort to be able to dig in to get to that creative realm of Calgary. So I think it's promising to me that like we'll get to a point where it will be right up in people's faces, like the talent that is here in Calgary, and we don't have to like dig to find it.
Yeah, I want that to happen. It will happen. Yeah, it will. Maybe the better way to phrase it, I want to be part of it when it happens, as opposed to.
Yeah, I love that. And you are doing that now, right? Like you're creating a path for that to happen. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. And not just for your work, but logging in. It's great. I need more conversations like this to keep me going. Is there anything I don't know, pressing about what you're doing right now that we should message before I hit the stop button on all this stuff? Was there anything kind of burning in the back of your mind that was worth putting on the record, so to speak?
Yeah, I just will want to keep you posted to just share and invite people to like just kind of get to know the work more. As I mentioned, I'm going to be doing a book. My other book, Poetic Justice, is available at Shelf Life Books here in Calgary or through the Calgary Public Library. And I just want to say thanks for the opportunity to sit down and get to know you more and just find out about your vision and your creative projects. So thank you.
So we come again to the suggestion that art and creativity is not just a hobby or a pastime. It has cultural and intellectual significance. When used intentionally, it can provoke an audience to ask questions about how the world is structured and where they fit in it. Wilmer does this by building imagery and portraiture that both challenges you to face something you might be shying away from, as well as to appreciate beauty in these differences. We have a unique opportunity to press these conversations here in Calgary. The challenge is to have the courage to push these narratives where you live, and to be brave enough to be at the forefront of these conversations through art. How about this? What's the best thing that you've changed about yourself?
You know what? I really love all the changes that have happened in my life. You know, I like every single thing that has changed me in my life, has impacted me, has brought me to like where I am now. And you know, this is a pretty good place to be for sure.
If you could tell the world one thing, what would it be?
Thank you.
We'll leave it at that. That's great. Thank you so much, man. That was awesome. I really appreciate it. Yeah.
Thank you, David. Like that's amazing. Thanks for all your questions, and I just really want to thank you for opening up and sharing. I'm really admire your journey, and I'm really excited to see what else you're gonna create.
Well, me too. This episode was brought to you by the Calgary Foundation. Whether it's funding anti-racism programs, addiction recovery, or food hampers for the hungry, for 65 years, the Calgary Foundation has proudly supported the charitable community to address some of Calgary's biggest challenges. Now, during this period of unprecedented urgent needs, Calgary Foundation renewed its commitment to building a healthy, vibrant, giving, caring, and resilient community. If you're a registered charity looking for a grant, a professional advisor creating a giving plan for your client, or a donor wanting to give back to community, discover a wealth of resources at calgaryfoundation.org and learn more about their work through Calgary Foundation.